Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today we're going to have a look at what's inside the box of this SU-100 kit. As is probably pretty obvious, this is the 1/35th scale SU-100 kit from Zvezda. The box does a good job of telling us that. The back of the box has some nice colour images of the built and painted model, and a bunch of information about the vehicle in Russian and English. There's also a bit of information like parts count, which is 289, and the model's length, which is 27.7 centimeters. That's just short of 11 inches if you use freedom units. This kit is a 2018 tooling. I understand that there's also an earlier release available. I have no experience with that older kit. In fact, this is my first 1/35th scale kit from Zvezda. I'm sure that's very interesting to you, and you would like to hear more, but I'm going to move on and look at what's inside the box now. The colourful part of the box is merely a sleeve to go over the inner cardboard box, which is good and solid. This should protect the contents during shipping pretty well. The plastic sprues come in 2 sealed bags, and that should stop the parts from getting lost. There's also a bunch of paper stuff, but we'll get to that later. I think most of you are probably more interested in the plastic anyway, so why don't I just waffle on a bit more? Okay, so there are 5 of these wheel sprues. Please insert really good joke here. These wheels are pretty simple in all honesty. That's not a complaint of course, and they do look very nice and neat. You can't really see them in the close-up pictures, but there were a few strands of stringy plastic waste on a couple of these sprues. Kind of like flattish plastic hair. I wouldn't think that's anything to worry about though. Not only do these sprues have wheels, but the wheel hubs are here too, and they look just as good as the wheels. This next sprue contains some of, at least in my opinion, the coolest parts. It's also quite large, which isn't the worst thing ever, though it can be a bit of a hindrance while working in a relatively small or crowded space, like my desk while I'm streaming with cameras and microphone in the way. That might mostly be a me problem and not something that you're worried about. The important thing is that the parts on this sprue are quite nice. They're very well moulded and fairly neat. There are of course mould lines, every kit has those, and if you told me that you had a kit with absolutely no mould lines, I would accuse you of being on drugs. The details on these parts are really quite nice. I am of course no SU-100 surgeon, so I can't tell you which bolt or nub should or shouldn't be where it is, or anything like that, but it looks pretty accurate to me, for whatever that's worth. I mean, it wouldn't be considered hyper-detailed or anything like that, and to be fair, this is a fairly cheap kit. That said, it is still quite good. You might be able to see a little bending on this sprue. In a couple of these shots, the casemate roof does look like it's bent, and it does have a very slight bow to it, but it's mostly the sprue frame that is bent. It's more pronounced on this sprue, which has things like the gun mantlet, idler wheels, and some other odds and ends. Like the previous sprue, these parts are all quite neat and the detail is good. Something I quite like in these parts, like the lower rear plate, some of the parts that function as keying are also weld lines. I think that's really cool. In fact, a lot of the parts like the casemate and lower hull also have some nice weld line detail. It might be a small thing, but I feel like it adds a lot. We also find the main gun on this sprue. In these shots it does look a bit ugly. There's a kind of swirly effect in the plastic. The part is actually fine, it's just got a weird coloration. I think I will have to drill out the end of this gun, but otherwise it looks fine. If you can see this part in the center, which is the side of the commander's cupola, the weld seam detail I was talking about is here. I think it looks rather good. Would you believe that there's another sprue? You would? Yeah, me too. This one has a lot of the suspension related bits. At the time of recording, I have actually started building this kit, and this is the sprue that I've used the most parts from so far, and I can confirm that they're pretty nice. The parts do need a little bit of cleanup of course, but so far it has been a lot less than I was expecting. There isn't really a lot to say about these parts that I haven't already said. I'm kind of just waffling so that you have a chance to look at all the bits. Something I like about these hull side parts is the slots in the side through which we're going to be able to see the suspension springs. It does add some interest, even though I'm pretty sure it's almost entirely going to be obscured by wheels. Still, it's a nice touch, and it's great if you want to build the model with a missing wheel or something. The tracks in this kit are moulded in black plastic, and I was pleased to see that these are link and length tracks, as opposed to the dreaded rubber band tracks. Sure, these are going to be slightly more work than rubber band tracks, but I'm pretty confident that they'll produce better results. Probably not quite as good as the individual metal track links that you can get as aftermarket parts, but they will do the trick quite well. The detailing on these tracks is very nice, though there are a few ejector pin marks on the insides. Hopefully those won't be too visible. The final sprue is this clear one, which is admittedly a bit hard to see. Such is the way with clear parts, I guess. The parts on this are mostly vision devices and headlamp lenses, and they're all neat and tidy bits, which shouldn't need too much cleanup at all. I do like the addition of clear parts for the vision devices, though they're almost certainly going to require some parts to be left off for painting, which isn't always ideal. Oh well, they look good anyway. Also included is this string. This is obviously intended for making towing cables. It's a nice shiny metallic colour, which I kind of like. We also get this piece of mesh. This is to be installed inside the rearmost grille on top of the engine deck. This is quite a fine mesh, and I think it's going to look good when installed and painted. It will definitely require either some painting in behind it before installation, or, probably a better idea, you could just leave the grille part unglued until the time for painting comes around. That's what I think I'll do. Okay, so that's all of the pieces we need to build the SU-100. There is still some more stuff though, like decals. Decals are pretty good if you don't want to hand paint markings, and these do look pretty good. You get some numbers and text which says something. I don't know, I don't speak the Russian. There isn't really a whole lot of variety here, and oddly enough there isn't a star like you might expect to see on a Russian vehicle, but that's okay. There is enough here, and if you do want some other markings, aftermarket decals aren't the hardest thing in the world to source. Or if you build a lot of models like I do, you've probably got a few extra decals lying around anyway. Speaking of markings, this piece of paper has 2 marking options and some suggested painting colours. Of course this is very simple, but it might be a good starting point for somebody, or you could just disregard it. What you probably shouldn't disregard though is these instructions. This is a rather big sheet, which I have been finding a bit unwieldy on my desk, but the instructions are laid out in a fairly sensible way, with sub-assemblies off to the sides of the main steps. So far I have no complaints, and I'm pretty confident I'll be able to finish the model with no major issues. At least none with the instructions. Actually, I'm pretty sure there should be no issues at all with the build. This sheet of paper probably should have come before the instructions. It's got a bunch of information about the SU-100 and some useful advice in a couple of languages. The other side has some sprue diagrams, which will show you everything on the sprues. I do like that this isn't included in the instructions. If I do need to reference it, I can have it off to the side, instead of needing to shuffle back and forth through the instructions. Okay, so that's everything that comes in the box. I think the plastic in this kit is pretty good. It's obviously not super high-end stuff, but it is still pretty decent, especially for the price. This kit can be had for well under 40 Australian dollars, and I'm quite happy to pay that for a kit like this. I obviously reserve my right to change my tune about it once I finish the build, which at this point I have started but not finished. And depending on when you're watching this, there may still be time to watch me building it live on Twitch. Check the description for the link to my channel. There will eventually be a build video here on YouTube, and I'll link to that somewhere around here when it's ready. Anyway, I don't see there being anything likely to go wrong with this kit to cause me to have the buyer's remorse. Like I said before, I haven't actually built any Zvezda kits in this scale, though I have built a handful of their offerings in both 1/72nd and 1/100th scales, and I've been quite pleased with those. I think they're good value for money. I'll be able to give some actual opinions on this kit once I've built it, so do keep an eye out for that video. For those watching this video when it's freshly uploaded, I did actually buy 2 of this kit and I will be giving away one on stream. I'm planning to have a community day of sorts on the morning of December 31st. I am of course in Australia, so it will probably still be the 30th for a lot of you. It's going to be a live stream over on Twitch, so if you don't already follow me, head on over to twitch.tv/Herbert_Erpaderp or follow the link in the description. Give me a follow and you'll be notified when I go live. It's also worth noting that subscribers on Twitch do have a better chance of winning. If you are watching this after the 31st, I guess disregard all of that, or get into your time machine. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful or interesting for you. If so, feel free to share the video with your friends or anybody you think might get something out of it. Have you built this kit yourself? Did you encounter any issues? Were you happy with the results? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've got pictures, we would sure love to see them over on Discord, the link to which is in the description, as well as links to all of my other stuff. Also, don't forget to subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a YouTube member or patron, and all the other things you do on YouTube and social media. And as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, and thanks for watching. Farewell.